Welcome to IAS project. In this video, let's talk about political organization during later Vedic period. First, let's look at the administration and government. In later Vedic period, the number of officials increased greatly. Previously, we have learnt that in early Vedic period, king was mainly assisted by two people. The first was Purohita, who was the priest, and then there was also a Senani, who was basically the commander of the army. But in the case of later Vedic period, the number of officials basically increased. So, other than Purohita and Senani, there were also officers for tax collection, also for maintaining the treasury, and also there was a royal messenger. Other than these three officers, there were also many other officers which we will discuss shortly. So, this was about the administration at higher levels. But at the lower levels, the administration was mainly carried out by village assemblies. Moreover, princes and chiefs also ruled over the tribes. In our last video, we have learnt that many number of tribes came together and then they formed a kingdom. However, the dominant tribe that was existing during the kingdom gave the name of its tribe to the territory. For example, initially Panchala was basically a tribe, which means that Panchala was the name of the people. However, Panchala was the most dominant tribe in the Panchala region. That is why the region also came to be known as Panchala. Similarly, Kuru was basically a tribe of people. Because the Kuru tribe was the most dominant tribe in the Indo-Gangetic divide, the name of the region also became Kuru. So the word Kuru refers to both tribe as well as the region or the kingdom. Moreover, in the later Vedic period, we also have very few examples of election of king or the chief. And this election was mainly based on the physical and other important qualities like war making capability and fighting capability. So basically we can say that in later Vedic period, in the case of elections, basically heroes were being selected as the kings or the Rajan. So after such election of Rajan, what happened was, in most of the cases, Rajan tried to make this post hereditary, which means that if initially there was a king, then his son would become a king. So this is the meaning of hereditary succession. When we talk about hereditary succession, there are mainly two types of examples. The first example is primogeniture or ultimogeniture. Primogeniture basically means the eldest son of the king becomes the next king. Ultimogeniture means the youngest son of the king becomes the next king. So this is one type of hereditary succession. If the eldest son becomes the king, then it is called as primogeniture type of succession. If the youngest son becomes the king, then it is called as ultimogeniture type of succession. Mostly primogeniture exists, ultimogeniture is very rare. Okay. Then there is also another kind of hereditary succession, which is called as co-parcenary type of succession. Co-parcenary type of succession means that, for example, if king has, let's say, 4 sons, then the kingdom is divided into 4 parts and one part goes to each son. This is called as co-parcenary type of succession. This type of succession was followed by Mughals. However, this type of succession was not always followed, because we know example of Aurangzeb. What happened with Aurangzeb? Aurangzeb had other brothers also. For example, Dara Shikoh, Murad Baksh, and there was another brother, I don't remember the name. Anyway, so according to the co-parcenary rule in Mughals, what should happen? The empire of Shah Jahan has to be divided among the 4 sons. But this did not happen. Aurangzeb killed each one of them by some means. And then Aurangzeb took the power of the Mughal emperor. So similarly, in the later Vedic period also, the successions were not always smooth. For example, if we talk about example of later Vedic period successions, then we know about the story of Mahabharata. Mahabharata actually refers to the events of later Vedic period. But we already know that Mahabharata was compiled much later than later Vedic period. In the epic of Mahabharata, it was written that Duryodhana, who was basically the younger cousin of Yudhishthira, or let's say Dharmaraja, usurped the power. Usurp basically means take the power by force. So because of this usurpation of power by Duryodhana, what happened was Pandavas and Kauravas fought the Kurukshetra war. We already know what is the result of this war. Entire Kuru clan got destroyed because of this war. Moreover, during later Vedic period, kings also took different titles like Virat, Swarat, Bhoja, Samrat, Ekrat, Raja Vishwarajan, Akhila Bhuvanapati, and some other fancy titles like these. Moreover, Rajas also conducted sacrifices. For example, Ashvamedha sacrifice, Rajasuya sacrifice, and Vejapeya sacrifice. Vejapeya sacrifice was basically a drink of strength or a chariot race. And when a Raja conducted Vejapeya sacrifice, it raised the status of such Raja to the level of Samrat. Samrat means emperor, whereas Raja simply means king. So obviously, emperor is having a higher status than king. That is why kings conducted Vejapeya sacrifice, and by conducting the Vejapeya sacrifice, the king raised his status to Samrat. One more important change was happening in the later Vedic period. It was basically that the nature of the kingdom was also changing, which means that the tribes were not important anymore. It was basically the territory that was important. Jana means tribe, whereas Janapada basically means territory. So in the case of later Vedic period, Janapada was more important compared to Jana. So if we look at some of the officers that were supporting the king, then the king had functionaries like Purohita, Senani, Mahisi, and some other officers who were called as Ratnins. This is very important. We already know that Purohita and Senani were also serving the king in the early Vedic period. But in the later Vedic period, there were other officers called as Ratnins. Ratnin simply means a jewel bearer. A jewel bearer means that officer basically has a jewel with him. And the jewel basically shows the authority of the officer. So the list of Ratnins include Purohita, Senani, Chamberlain, King's Charioteer, and various other influential palace servants. Chamberlain simply means manager of the royal household. So Chamberlain was basically the person who was taking care of the king's household. Please note that the person who was driving the king's chariot was also a Ratnin. So this again shows the importance of charioteers in the later Vedic period. So other than the Ratnins, the relatives of the king, courtiers, as well as palace officials also got some power in the later Vedic period. Courtiers simply means people who attend the court and advise the king. So basically, courtier is an advisor to the king. In the later Vedic period, collection of taxes also became common. But we must remember that there was no regular taxation system during this period. So there was collection of taxes, but there was no proper taxation system during later Vedic period. We have already talked about Bali in early Vedic period. Bali basically is the voluntary contribution that is given by the people to the king. So this Bali continued even in later Vedic period. So the king or the Rajan received this Bali from the ordinary tribesmen, or we can simply call them as Vis. In later Vedic period, there was a treasurer and also a revenue collector. Treasurer was called as Sangrihitri, whereas revenue collector was called as Bhagaduga. These were very important officers in later Vedic period, but both of these officers did not exist in early Vedic period. We should also note that both Sangrihitri and Bhagaduga were important Ratnins. Ratnin means jewel bearer. So this is about the top level administration. If we talk about the bottom level administration, it was basically the village assemblies that were conducting the administration in the village. And these village assemblies were dominated by chiefs of dominant clans. This is very important. They were not democratic. Moreover, these village assemblies also delivered justice. Another important point that you have to note here is that even in later Vedic period, the king did not have a standing army. This is very, very important. Then how did the king wage his battles? For waging battles, the king mustered tribal fighting militia. We already discussed what is difference between militia and military. Militia is basically a temporary kind of military. Moreover, militia is not the professional military. It is basically the civilians who come to join the fight who are called as militia. And militia is temporary in nature. It is not a standing army. So the king mustered this militia and then he fought the wars and battles. If we talk about wars and battles in later Vedic period, wars were not only fought for the cattle, but they were also fought for territory. Moreover, we can say that since territory was very important now, most of the battles were mainly for territory. For example, Mahabharata war or the Kurukshetra war was not for cattle. It was basically for the territory or the kingdom of Kuru. Another development is that elephants were also tamed during this period. However, we must note that these elephants were not used for war. I have mentioned this point here because when we talk about Mahajanapada period and the Magadha Empire, there we will learn that elephants were very important for making wars. Please like and subscribe. You can download this presentation from our Telegram channel. The name of the channel is IAS Project. The link for this channel is found in the description section below. Thank you.